Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I'm joined by PJ Barclay. He is the president and CEO of Impirica and somebody I've known for a few years now. And so, welcome to the show, PJ.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lance. Nice to be here.
So, before we get into the backstory of your entrepreneurial journey, as well as what it is that Impirica does, would you mind telling us a little bit about your thoughts on what you think three things are that every entrepreneur needs to know?
Yeah, I would think that these are probably three broad topics, but I think very relevant is as an entrepreneur, I think it's essential that you know your business, you know your market, and I'd say very close to that is knowing yourself. Those seem very broad topics, but I think you need to know every aspect of your business, from the financial side to the product side, to what it is that you're offering your team, and really sort of understanding how your organization beats is an essential step to know where you could actually push it, what you need to change, what you need to move, because it's a constant evolving project, your business. So really knowing your business is important, and that covers all aspects that are involved within a business, from team, finances, product, the sales side, the operations is very, very essential. And to look past any of those things, it would probably be a risk and to your detriment, because you need to understand sort of how your business flows. And I think the second one is obviously knowing your market. If you do not understand your market, if you do not know your market well enough, I think you're set up to fail, because one, you don't know what your market needs and what your market's telling you. And the last thing you want to do is spend a lot of money on developing a product that is not fit within that market. And there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of tears and there's probably a lot of capital that you could lose by misunderstanding your market and what their needs really are. I think by understanding those first two, understanding your business and understanding the market, gives you the best opportunity to find that fit, give you that ability to really focus and make sure that you're developing a success story. So those would be the first two. And then I think the third one is just as important, if not the most important. As an entrepreneur, you need to know yourself. You need to know what your strengths are. Probably more importantly, you need to know what your weaknesses are. And where you're weak, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right skill sets and the right insights that could address some of those areas where you may not have those strengths. But then also understanding your strengths is double down on those, focus on those, use that to your ability and use it to your competitive advantage in terms of how you pull this organization along.
Yeah, love it. And so in terms of the strengths, I'm just curious, what would you say would be some of the superpowers that you bring to the table yourself then?
I'm not so sure about superpowers, but I would say that my strengths would definitely be around sort of casting that vision, and then really breaking that vision down into something that is tactical and can be articulated to a team to get that team to buy in to that vision. I think what we do as an organization in many ways can be deemed revolutionary and can be disruptive, and it has those elements to it. But I think for a team and for a group of investors to come behind a story that is placing a product in a space that the market don't yet know that they need, and it takes a bit of a leap of faith, if you will, on some of their parts. It's really important that you're able to articulate that vision and then really break it down into tangible, digestible formats that people can understand the journey and see the direction that you go in. So I think one part is the vision side of it and seeing the opportunity, but I think more importantly, it's breaking it down into tactical steps that people, whether it be investors or the team, can chew, and make sure that they don't get swallowed by a grand vision. And I think the other side of it would just be the people skills. Whether it's the team, whether it is a group of investors, whether it be the market. A lot of what you're doing is you cultivating a relationship of trust. And I think having the ability to have those skills that can foster trust is important for all the people that come around this venture, because it does take a community to birth a venture and see it succeed.
Yeah, most definitely. So tell us a little bit about Impirica. What is it that you guys are doing there? What problems are you trying to solve?
Well, from a problem standpoint, I think there's been a growing global focus around human performance and this question of whether a person is impaired or fit for duty. And I think the growing global trend of legalizing cannabis has put a greater focus on this question around impairments. How is it measured? What have people done in the past? And perhaps what are the shortfalls in measuring this question or answering this question around impairments? And we're definitely not exclusive to cannabis, but the legalization or the macro trend of legalizing cannabis has really forced the world to stop and focus on this question of impairment and fitness for duty. So what we solve is we actually offer decision makers in various settings a way to proactively measure impairment risk as it relates to driving and operating in other safety sensitive environments. We give stakeholders the peace of mind, whether it be in their workforce, whether it be with their patients or with loved ones, that these individuals can actually operate safely in a given environment.
Yeah. And so this business you joined, so you're not one of the founders, but you came in about 6 years ago, I think you said in a previous conversation. Is that right?
That's correct. About 6.5 years ago.
Yeah. And so your experience then coming into that organization, I guess, first off, what motivated you to jump in and, become a partner to buy into this company and to lead the charge? What did you see 6 years ago that really got you excited?
Yeah, so I think the organization, to your point, I didn't have the opportunity to found this organization. There were people that were far smarter than me that developed the science that took a cognitive approach to measuring performance and impairment risk. So the organization had this wealth of intellectual property around using cognitive science to predict impairment risk. And it was focused in a particular direction. I think before I stepped in, again, there was this move, whether it be here in Canada on a national level, whether you saw the growing trend on a state-by-state basis, or other areas of the world that were looking to legalize cannabis. And this question was consistently coming up to say, how is it that we're going to measure impairment? And again, it's not about exclusivity to a cannabis detector, but it was something that happened in the world that caused the world to ask, how do we know that a person is fit to do what we're asking them to do?
Yeah.
And when you look at the approach that this group of researchers had taken to use cognitive science, for me, it was clear. There was a clear opportunity that the application of that science could be used and pointed, if packaged correctly, to answer this question around impairment risk and give stakeholders that information that they need to proactively respond.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, you're approaching it when you were evaluating whether to get involved with this company, you're approaching it from a place that a lot of entrepreneurs don't have, I guess, the privilege or the ability to, because your background is on the audit side, and you were working, you said, at Deloitte prior to well, that's what brought you into Canada, I think you said. And so you understood how to analyze a company and really determine whether or not there's potential and there's for success, right? And so you obviously saw some things that a typical entrepreneur maybe doesn't get the opportunity to, because they're building something from the ground up. You're coming in while the research is already done. But then you have this ability to really dissect the potential value that this company is bringing. When you were doing that analysis, I'm just curious, is there anything that you'd be able to share with our audience in terms of what you were really looking at when you were deciding whether or not this was a company that you wanted to join?
Yeah, and I would say it's a good question, and the assumption is probably a correct one, that I probably put an auditing lens on the organization, and I'd be the first to say that I probably got it all wrong. I probably got it horribly wrong in how I analyzed the business, because the focus of the business was very much towards, when you've got that audit lens and that financial lens on, it comes very much down to fundamentals. And I was actually stretched out of it, because there was a lot of indicators that told me that if I was just making a decision based on financial fundamentals, this was not the right investment to make for me personally, whether it be my time, my money, a shift in my career. I
Yeah.
think what it really came down to is, if we go back to where that strength of mine actually sat, was with regards to the vision, that
Yeah.
I could identify a real world problem that needed to be solved. And I found a way that if this particular application, this science could be packaged and pointed to address that problem, we've got a very valuable business on our hands, and that's starting to take root now. So I almost had to throw the textbook and the financial analysis to a side and actually say, do you believe that this is an organization that has intellectual property that, if pointed and focused correctly towards a global growing problem and a question that needs to be answered, do we have a valuable business on our hands? And that was really the decision that forced me to make the jump and risk my career and say goodbye to Deloitte, which was an amazing organization for me. But that's where I saw the opportunity that outweighed the risk of taking the step.
Yeah, which is really interesting, right? Because it's funny. So even you having the luxury of having all of that training and understanding and being able to dissect it, it came down to that trust, the vision, but also, you know, that feel, the gut feeling. Is this something that I want to jump into? Which is so interesting, because when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are building things, like sometimes they're making that leap of faith just based off of their gut instincts as well. Yeah, and so was that gut instinct, is that something that is born out of, you know, a history of entrepreneurship or being around entrepreneurs, you know, whether it's family members or maybe early in your career and working with different companies? Where did that come from? How did you, I guess, develop that trust?
I think trust, like in any relationship, trust is grown. Trust is fostered, and even with yourself. I would say that, you know, if I look back at the last 6 years, I would say I didn't trust myself enough.
Mm,
If it's one thing that I would look back on, I would say that I should have trusted myself sooner. Your instincts are there. I think when you're in it and when you feel it, and if I go back to sort of those three things that an entrepreneur needs to know, when you think of knowing the business and really getting into the details of the business and knowing the market, really understanding what makes the market tick and what that market needs, and then knowing yourself. I think when you connect the thread across all three of those knowledge points, you start to really get, you start, I don't want to be philosophical here, but you almost move in one with that whole opportunity. And
yeah.
you start to realize that your instincts start to tell you, look, this is working, this is not working, this is what you need to act on, and this is what you don't need to act on. And I would say, in the start of this, it's something, even with yourself, that you got to learn to trust yourself. And there's many instances where my gut in an instinct told me, or in a moment, my gut instinct was to act, and I rather deferred towards other data, potentially emotion,
Yeah.
in where you didn't feel as though you trusted yourself, or you didn't have the experience. And it probably hurt us. It
Mm,
probably hurt me. But as you go through this, and actually as you start to press into trusting yourself and trusting those instincts based on your knowledge of the business and the market, and as you become more self-aware of where your strengths and weaknesses are, you start to realize that you can start making those calls quicker, start trusting yourself to make those calls quicker. So it's not something, I think that there are many people that have got a gift in that outright. They're just very instinctual in how they do it. For me, I think it took some practice, and I think naturally I've been a risk adverse person. And I've had to grow. I mean, it kind of sounds contradictory to what I've just said and taking this leap of
yeah.
faith to get into this, but I had to break the shackles of perhaps always looking at the risk and always analyzing it. It goes back to the point of setting aside some fundamentals and actually just saying, do you believe in this opportunity? Do you believe in yourself? And then start pushing into that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that the belief in oneself is critical there, right? Because I think that's where we start to face a lot of potential execution failures, as if we start to lose that faith in our abilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Now, in terms of the business itself, you were talking about the cannabis industry as being one of the ones that has really stimulated a lot of the, I guess, interest in what it is that you guys are doing because of this ability to cognitively assess whether somebody is fit for work or for whatever task it is that they're being asked to do. I'm just trying to remember the timeline. So 6 years ago, was that a thing yet? Was legalized cannabis in Canada a thing, or did that come shortly after that?
No, it was a thing, and I think what you found
Okay.
is that if you really look at where it became uh, a hot topic was probably 2014 when the risks started manifesting from Colorado. So the legalization of cannabis had already taken place in Colorado, and some of the data that was coming through from Colorado was starting to indicate that some of these risks that people were afraid of were actually manifesting. And then there was this move to legalize cannabis on a national basis here in Canada that got workforces, politicians, policymakers start to question of what are we going to do in addressing impairment, because the science is indicating that you can't rely on a measure in the system. This is more performance based. Is there a solution that would look at human performance to predict that risk? So
Yeah.
what's interesting is that we are not in the cannabis industry. We just really use the spotlight that cannabis provided on this topic of fitness for duty and impairment, and a different way of looking at it, to use that opportunity to bring focus on this kind of testing. And that's where it's gained momentum and started to move more mainstream in these areas that are deemed safety sensitive.
Yeah, yeah, and focus is an area that I'd like to probe into a little bit with you as well, because your technology could be used in so many different ways. I mean, I'm a big fan of football, and so when I'm watching, the NFL on the weekends, I'm seeing, the collisions and they're pulling players off the field and putting them into concussion protocol tents, and they're doing all their assessments and so on. In sport, it's becoming such a big topic. And I know you and I talked about this about 3 years ago, how that might be an area that you could really apply your research and what you guys have developed into that area. But there's a multitude of different ways of really applying it. And so how do you stay focused in a particular kind of vertical or space when you have so much opportunity out there? Because obviously, if you're not focused and you spread yourself too thin, that's going to be a problem as well.
Yeah. The it's almost the opportunity is great. I think that when you think of an application of something like cognitive science that could be used in many different verticals, I think that that's great on a pitch deck to start speaking about how this technology and how this intellectual property could actually be applied in many different ways in many different fields.
Yep.
But it's also at the same time possibly a curse, because everybody and their grandmother will tell you a different way in which in which the solution can be used, or how cognitive science could be used. And I would say the challenge that we've actually had, and we had for a long time, was making sure that we focus on doing certain markets well. We could sit here and we could spin our wheels trying to attack multiple markets. And then you can apply the old adage of saying, typically if you chase two rabbits, you lose both. What we've come down to is to say, where is it that we're going to focus? And we just push on that consistently. We're going to say that to our team. We're going to say that to our investors. We're going to say that to our market, that we're going to do this one market very, very well. And then once we do that well, we're going to use that as a foundational piece to do the next market even better. So where we find ourselves now is we've really doubled down in the commercial transportation space, focusing specifically on trucking and transit. The need is really there at the moment. When you look at some of the risks manifesting and some of the macro trends of driver shortages and driver fitness becoming more and more prevalent and more of a question amongst decision makers. So we know we've got a sweet spot there, but the beauty about what we have is that now once we do that and we can hit that out of the park, so to speak, we've got the opportunity to use that as a foundation to go and attack other verticals where the science could be applied. So It's not to say that that isn't there. It's just the challenge is that when you open up the vision too wide, everybody starts to focus on the vision and doesn't actually get tactical to actually deliver, which is unfortunately or fortunately the way in which a business is measured.
Yeah, and I think this is so key, because I mean, I see this when we come in, we start working with clients on their marketing. When we are asking them, okay, so what are the products? What are the services? Because most companies that we deal with, they have more than one. But where are the ones where there's the greatest opportunity? Because your resources and your whether that's time and money or focus as well, those are limited. And so you really need to kind of pick the battles. And that's where we start and build that foundation, generate the success there, and then move into the other ones as well. So it's a very similar. So we're doing it just from a marketing perspective. You're doing it at really the vision of the company perspective, which is I think absolutely brilliant, and something that our audience can really learn from, because I have seen a lot of companies really struggle because they are so widely focused, or have no focus. I guess it's really, they're just spreading themselves too broad. And if they would just apply focus, they would be so much more successful.
Yeah. And Lance, you raise a good point on just this need for focus. The pandemic was obviously devastating for many, and we found ourselves at the beginning of the pandemic, and where our backs were effectively against the wall.
Yeah.
And you have this realization that you're either going to sink or swim, and the only way in which you swim when it's a storm like that is you actually have to start cutting away some of the things that you can't carry. So it almost survival mode almost forces you to really be ruthless in terms of what you need to cut away so that you can just focus on swimming. And for us, we are thankful that through the pandemic, the storm that it was actually forced us to cut away so that we could swim and we could survive as a team. And I think it's because of that, and using sort of that pandemic to say, look, if you do not focus, if you do not cut away the things that will hold you back or pull you down, or cause a distraction, you are not going to survive these, what we at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought was going to be 3-4 months, landed up being a good 2 years. And it's because of that, because of really sort of honing down where it is that we're going to focus to survive, has given us the opportunity to come out of the pandemic far stronger than what we did going in, from an alignment of the team, from a product standpoint, from a market receptiveness standpoint. Those are all things that came down to just this ruthless focus. So that's my statement to the team, and actively asking, how does this set towards our organizational objective of focusing this product towards commercial transportation at this state?
Yeah. I think that's a really suitable analogy, and I really like the way that you articulated that. So true. I'm really curious about, at this stage in your business, so you're 6 years into it with your experience, about 20 years in from a business standpoint, but 6 years since you've been leading it, and you have survived COVID and that, so you're at a different stage. You've come out of that stronger, like you said. What's easier for you or for your company now at this stage in its business life?
It's a good question. I think what's easier for the business is possibly getting sales. We getting more reputation within the markets in which the market is speaking amongst their peers, that is saying, this is a solution that is working for them, that is solving a problem that has not necessarily been solved in the past. So we're getting a lot of referrals. So that makes the sales process easier. It makes the sales cycle shorter. I think with the theme of focus, by having the team focused and having very clear objectives in the direction in which we're going, has been easier to make sure that we avoid distractions. So distractions, by its nature of us focusing, have become less, and our ability to execute plans and get close to actually reaching sort of milestones that we're looking to achieve within a given year or a quarter have become easier. And I think from a personal side, what's got easier for me is possibly dealing with the stress, dealing with the way in which you can balance this and still live a life, that you recognize that you present, you make sure that you're actively present in the various environments that you find yourself within your life. I've been able to manage that easier. That's become easier. To the workload, your runway has been extended in the business, so to speak. So it's no longer just survival from quarter to quarter, but you can actually start to plan, what are we doing in 2023, and where are we going to be in 2026? So that kind of longer term planning has become easier because we've got a clear direction where we're going, and we got some market movement that has indicated that we are well on our way to making this a success.
So we just finished hearing you talk about some of the things that are easier. What keeps you up at night now?
Where do I start? Those are usually the easy things. Well, those are the difficult things that keep you up. I think for me, just the way that my mind works is I'm constantly there's constantly a part of my brain that is constantly thinking about the business, from many aspects. And again, if we go back to your first question on what do we need to know, those three categories of know your business, know your market, know yourself. I think that those three things are constantly themes that are in my head on what we need to do to move to the next step. So the things that keep me up at night is one, what are I'd say from a risk standpoint, what are the risks that I don't know? I think it's always a concern for me, are the things that I don't know. So, and probably more important, the things that you don't know that you don't know. So again, another philosophical answer, but I would say that constantly surrounding myself with different mindsets, different thought patterns that could possibly identify those areas that we need to address from a risk perspective. We find ourselves in a very interesting space where the whole theme of human performance and using human performance to identify impairment risk is a very, very new industry. So with that, you'd mentioned that this has been a journey for this particular organization, 20 years, that has included research that has put us in a very competitive advantage. But the reality is that with innovation, with new ideas, with AI, great minds across the world are starting to look at this problem. So I think that there is an emergence of competitive products that could come within the space that we've actively got to be on top of to see how we continue to differentiate and actually stamp out our area of the market, knowing that there's going to be a landscape of other technologies that address this issue. Within the organization, I think team is always something that keeps me up at night. I don't take the trust that they've extended to me for granted, and making sure that we've got a highly effective team that can execute the plan not only next year but for the next 36 months to even 60 months. Who we've got, who do we need to surround us, who do we need to bring on board to help us actually realize the goals that we want to set before us. So there's a couple of things that I'd say consistently keep me up at night. That those would probably be some of the themes of where they're at. And then, it goes without saying that, are we building a high value organization? And what do we need to do to become a high value organization? What do we need to do when we move to potentially another round of financing? What are those milestones that we need to be in a place so we can maximize the value for the shareholders at that particular point? Is also something as we prepare a balance sheet that would facilitate a high level growth here in North America.
I'm really curious about what would be in a letter that you maybe would send back to the PJ who started the business or got into the business, and not started, but got into the business 6 years ago. What would you put in that letter to yourself?
Yeah, Lance, it's a very interesting question because on the day that I started this, a good friend of mine, he's been a friend for over 30 years, he actually wrote a handwritten note to me, and he put it in a card, and he put two simple statements where he said, "Pete, you've got this, and I've got your back." Yeah. And that really stood out for me because it was a great way to start, to just know that I've got this team that is behind me that I haven't even gone into, but like a network of friends and family that actually support me. But I think the letter that Nikos, my friend, had written to me would probably be no different to what I had written, or I would have written to myself. It would be very simple, it would be very short, and it would be something along the lines of, "Pete, you've got this. You have the talent, you have the skill. trust in your abilities, never forget where you came from, and always remember that you're not alone. And I'd probably finish it off with saying, go big or don't go at all.
Yeah. 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 It's such a funny thing, right? Because when we're in it, and it's that imposter syndrome that a lot of people talk about too, right? Where you know the stuff, but sometimes you don't trust that you know it as much as you need to, or that you'll figure it out, right? Like everything, and this is what I tell my son all the time, is there isn't really any problem that you can't overcome. Everything is figure outable.
Yeah.
I know that's not a word, but you can figure it out. You can get there as long as you have the skill set to critically analyze and think about things. And obviously you have that. I mean, the years you honed that skill when you were over at Deloitte, right? You're a real student of business, I would imagine. And you probably still are. So actually, I'd love to ask you on that front, what inspires you, or who inspires you, or where do you go to continue building that business excellence that you probably strive for?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's two parts to that question. I think when you speak of like who inspires you, I think outright off the bat, I'd say that it would be my wife Melanie, it would be my daughter Victoria, and my son Evan. They inspire me to be better, and to leave a legacy for them. And having an entrepreneur within a family often requires a lot of sacrifice. So I appreciate that, and they're supporting, even though my kids are 3 and 2. I think 2 would be my family back in South Africa. I think for any immigrant, you'd recognize that there's always a cost to be where you are. And where you are, you've often had to say goodbye to people that are far away. And they need to realize that there's a sacrifice over this. So by me being over here and recognizing the cost for me to be over here, which means being away from my mom, my dad, my sisters, my nephews and nieces and brother-in-laws and friends, that's an inspiration to maximize the opportunity that I've got.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think the third that would inspire me would be my team. The team that I work with over here, I do not take the trust that they've given me for granted. The fact that they've trusted me with their careers, the fact that they trust me with the vision that we've cast for this organization, that means a lot to me. And I think that it's important that trust is honored, and through that, there's an inspiration for me to really see them succeed, and I want to see them succeed. I would say something similar for investors in the investors that have come behind this opportunity. A lot of the time they're not investing in the company, they're investing in the team and the people, and that also inspires me to do well. And then from an inspiration standpoint, there's many mentors, and this is probably the second part of your question, but there's many mentors that have given many amounts of time, and there's many friends that have given many amounts of time and hours into just encouraging me and speaking into my career and my life. That they want to. You almost got this vision of them on the sidelines while you're running a race, and they're just clapping you on, saying, "Come on," and they're giving you advice, and they. When things do get tough, and when you drop your head, they're there to encourage you, to say that you can do this. And I think that there's you draw inspiration from those people that are around you to support. Probably lightheartedly, also the fact that I got a mortgage inspires me. There's nothing like having a mortgage over your head to get out of bed in the morning to go and work. So those are some of the realities too. But I think my family, my wife, my kids, family back in South Africa, the team over here, investors, and then the mentors and friends that have come alongside me just to encourage me to keep on going, and that it will be okay. Gives you a great source of inspiration to go and shoot big for an opportunity that I believe is on its way to be truly successful.
Yeah. Well, in the event that you've maybe inspired some of our listeners today, what would be the best way for somebody to reach out to connect with you or to learn more about Impirica?
Yeah. So if they want to reach out to me directly, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's PJ Barclay. I'd be happy to connect with you if you're in the city. I'm always happy to connect with a coffee or whatever that may be, or just an email chat. If you want to find out more about Impirica, you can go to our website, impirica.tech. You can reach out over there, and we've got a team that would engage with you. Or again, you could reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I can put you in contact with the team that can answer questions that you may have about our business.
Well, fantastic. And thank you so much for extending that offer to our audience. And thank you for taking the time to share with us your journey, because it's absolutely fascinating. I always love talking to people who have stepped into businesses and now are leading them. It's a different challenge, I think, to come in that kind of scenario versus somebody who has started the business. I'm not saying one or the other is necessarily easier or harder. They're just different challenges. And so it's really interesting to hear your take on it and what you guys are trying to do there. And I'm really impressed with Impirica. I have been for all the years that I've known you, and learn a little bit about what it is that you guys do. Like you said, the opportunity is immense. I love the fact that you guys are really focused and trying to knock it out of the park on this first vertical and then start applying that across. So the growth in front of you is grand, I'm sure.
Yep. No, well, thank you very much for the opportunity this afternoon, Lance. It's great chatting with you, and as well, just supporting what you're doing in the industry and the sector over here of connecting entrepreneurs and letting us tell our story for those that want to hear it.
Yeah, fantastic. And for those of you who are listening right now and you enjoyed this one, and you want to check out some of our past episodes, you can head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's going to be where you'll find the full archive and all the future episodes, of course. And if you're watching this and would prefer to be listening so that you can be a little bit more mobile, we are available on all your major podcasting platforms as well. So check us out by searching Amplify Your Business on your favorite podcasting platform. Until next time, everybody have a prosperous day.